My name is Michael Rubino.
I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Never Been Sicker. I am your host, Michael Rubino, and today's very special guest, Dr. Joel Kahn. Dr. Joel Kahn, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, you're a heart doctor, is that right?
Correct.
All right. And so I'm very curious because obviously you have a very unique view of this problem specifically, but we've never been sicker than we are today. And with all that being said, all the people that you see in your practice, I'm curious, what are you seeing and why do you think what's contributing to this decline here?
Yeah, it's not one thing, it's many things, but it's very, very real. I've been in practice 35 years, did about 10 years of training. So, you're turning the clock back to when I really started, late 70s, early 80s. It's a very different country. And, you see those pictures on Instagram of the beach in the 1970s and the beach now. And there is undoubtedly a lot more obesity, no fat shaming. It's just true. And something's driving it. And that's not the only factor, but that does drive inflammation, accumulation of toxins in fat stores. It's easier to store toxins in fat than it is in protein or the relatively limited carbohydrate stores in the body and all, although you can put some pretty evil toxins in your bones on a permanent basis. Our food supply has changed. There's way more families that do not have a kitchen that works anymore, maybe for reheating fast food and carry out and restaurant food brought in. And this stuff is not high quality. I owned 3 restaurants last decade, got out right before COVID pandemic, fortunately. And we strived hard to do high quality organic actually sourcing. And we were crazy, different than most restaurants. It still was very hard. Most restaurants, that oil that's frying your fries has been sitting there for 10 days. God knows what it is at this point, just one example. So There's a lot of pressures. Air quality matters. Air quality, if I looked at air quality and cardiovascular disease as a serious scientific topic, there'd be dozens, maybe hundreds of references. Water quality. So yes, I agree. It's like NASA, we got a problem. And the end result is every 40 seconds, somebody has a heart attack. Every 34 seconds, somebody dies of heart disease. That's just the United States. It's taking a huge toll. And unfortunately, heart disease remains every year the number one cause of death of men and women in America. It's moving a little younger. 20% of those are under 65 years old.
Wow.
And we hear all the time now. Today I read about an athlete, I think a weightlifter, 30 years old, dropped dead. Now there may be some, supplemental toxins he was putting in his body, or maybe not, but tragic stuff.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Yeah, it's really sad to see. We've seen this trajectory going in the wrong direction. And I think what's so interesting to me is, we've got pretty significant advancements in medicine, pretty significant advancements in technology. Yet things seem to be going in the wrong direction. It almost seems to me like we're not looking in the right direction for the actual problems here.
Well, it's true. There's a famous picture, I guess now you'd say a meme, but it goes back decades, of doctors in white coats mopping up the floor, not noticing that the sink is on and overflowing. And the problem would be solved by turning off the sink. But the medical system, the other analogy people use is people are falling off a waterfall into the bottom and getting injured, and the ambulances are there waiting. But, put a darn fence or some kind of protective thing at the top of the waterfall. The medical system we have is great for acute illness, car accidents, pneumonias, some other sudden acute leukemia. It's not so great, but it's great. But in preventive medicine, the most unpopular specialty is preventive medicine. I am a preventive cardiologist at this stage of my career. Trying to sell preventive lessons on social media is considered very challenging. Trying to get book deals on preventive medicine is considered very challenging. Yet it is the most noble pursuit. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. is not a new statement, but it's very true. And we got to start with infants, children, teenagers, and then move on through adults. And I think some of it's happening in the government right now. At least there's a discussion about some aspects, food quality for children. God knows. Let's start with that. We got a lot more to do.
Totally. Yeah, no, you brought up some really good points, right? Benjamin Franklin's famous quote there. Love that quote. Why do you think it is that we're not in this prevention mindset? Is it a societal problem? Is it just a systems problem? What do you think the problem is there?
Well, there's no disagreement that we should be exercising, walking, moving. There's no real fiery debates. There's no fiery debates about you should smoke or not smoke. There's unity. You shouldn't smoke. We haven't had total success. We've had pretty good success. Not too many people argue that sleeping isn't important. We got unity there. In the nutrition world, oh my God. And there's something in us. There's a famous anthropologist, that's the word I was looking for, Margaret Mead, who said it's easier to change a man's religion than it is to change their diet. And there is something about, I grew up on eggs and bacon, particularly I have some patients, I'm in Detroit, that are still in rural zones. Maybe they're farmers in Iowa or Ohio. They come up to see me. There's plenty of farmers in Michigan. And, they've just grown up on eggs and bacon and fried food, and they're paying a toll for it. And you get them to start eating oatmeal. Teach them to make a green smoothie. I mean, there's both the technical skill, having a blender and all the components you need, and then there's the taste factor. Let alone what the fast food industry has done to, there's a book called Sugar, Salt, Fat by Michael Moss. It must be 15 years old, but how the food industry has just played us based on our, very challenged difficulty to turn down things that just make our mouth feel wonderful. They call mouth bliss. So we've got, every vending machine, every gas station, middle of every grocery store, cafeterias, fast food restaurants. They're controlling our lives, and we're suffering from it. We're very weak when it comes to, making quality decisions, learning new habits, breaking the kitchen open and, cooking again.
It's almost like it's actually easier to eat unhealthily than it is to eat healthy, just because of the amount of stuff that we're constantly advertised to, the amount of the things that you see in the grocery aisle, and of course, usually healthy food is typically more expensive than the unhealthy stuff, depending on if you're into organic grocery or not, right? And so it's interesting, right? How that affects one, specifically people who might be on a budget with groceries. I mean, I know groceries have increased in prices over the last few years since COVID, and they really haven't come down a whole lot, which I know makes it more difficult. But yeah, it'd be nice if we didn't create these foods that are so bad for us in the first place, right?
Well, I agree, and a lot of that is government subsidies to promote our farmers and provide low cost components to the restaurant and food industry. And health was not on that agenda. Jobs important were on that agenda, profits were on that agenda, but definitely not public health. And we've suffered by the fact it's more expensive. Not always. Beans are cheap, rice is cheap. Farmers markets can have great values on fresh fruits and vegetables. A garden, we should get back to World War II, a victory garden, at least in the season of the year that your area will support it. In Michigan, of course, that's maybe 4 months, 5 months. Get back to some of those things. And you can feed a family inexpensively, but you got to, batch cook, and you got to have a shopping list, and you got to get buy-in from the kids. Sometimes the kids control the house. I see that a lot with my patients. I eat healthy, but I'm making other food for the kids. No, they should ideally be eating pretty similar food to what your enlightenment phase of your life has led you to do, but not always so easy. You just got to take that damn cell phone and iPad away and put them in their room until they come down and eat that damn broccoli.
Well said. I have two kids, so I can relate. I've got a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. That's actually 6 years. She just turned 6. 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. And we actually switched the regular pasta for like the protein pasta. I think Goodles is the brand, right?
Right.
So a nice little hack there. If the kids love to eat nothing but carbs, you can get these protein alternative carbs to get, at least make sure they're eating a little bit of a more well balanced meal. But I hear you. I mean, the kids, it's tough, right? But you gotta try to look for some of those hacks out there. Now we've talked a lot about food, right? So food's obviously an important subject because we eat and there's toxins in our food, right? And so limiting the toxin exposure from our food, I think, is really, really important. Now I'd love to shift gears for water, right? I think that the next thing that we consume as human beings or we're exposed to is toxins in the water. How does that play a role in the people you're seeing? Are you seeing a lot of issues with people drinking poor quality water or contaminated water? Any advice or insights you have on that subject?
Yeah, I think it is an issue and it can be addressed. Cost becomes a factor. It's true. There is, home reverse osmosis. Total home systems are pricey. You can get pretty nice desktop systems. We have one in my office. The toilets, city water, the sink, city water, but we drink a small desktop filtered system, RO, quite inexpensive and everyday. And the patients ask, what are we doing? They see us making water. Well, we're taking city water, making it pure water. But yeah, there can be heavy metals. I do check for what are called heavy metals: lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium. Lead pops up not infrequently. Of course, in Detroit, we've got the city of Flint an hour north of me. And that was sadly, maybe it was 8-10 years ago, the great dumping of lead from decayed water pipes to some extent, and a new water supplier in the city that is probably going to have an ongoing neurocognitive impairment on the children for a long time. So why, and right now the hot topic is fluoride in the water. I think 2 states have voluntarily banned it. Is it really good for kids' brains? Is it really good for our bones? And I think the trend is they'll probably be legislating fluoride out. So yeah, clean water is a God-given right. Now, I go to a restaurant, I order a bottle of, spring water. It's expensive. There's no doubt about it. You can do much better at home, and you should probably not be in restaurants too much anyways.
Yeah, good point. So then that brings me to another massive topic to discuss, which is air quality. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's a pretty big issue. We have outdoor air quality, right, as one problem, but we also have indoor air quality where people are spending 90% of their time indoors. And would love to hear your insights on air quality and the importance of it, and would love for you to share.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time and practicing 35 years, and 10 years before that, I think I mentioned that. I know we did not get a lecture at the University of Michigan Medical School about air quality and cardiovascular disease. But boy, has it come on like a lion out of a cage as a topic by study after study after study. I like to play online. Air quality, cardiovascular disease in the National Library of Medicine. 8,800 research studies. Now, some are higher quality, some are not, but you see related to heart rhythm problems called fibrillation, related to clogged arteries called coronary disease, related to high blood pressure, air quality, related to the onset of heart attack, air quality, related to dementia and Parkinson's and diabetes and obesity. And, we are accumulating a lot of toxins. There's some dramatic examples. I think during the Olympics in Beijing a number of years ago, they turned the factories off to have a better air quality for the athletes for a few weeks. And like the heart attack rate dropped substantially. That's been published and reported. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So at home and in my office, we have air filters, a few different brands actually, and we got to replace the HEPA filter. They're not too expensive. They're not so out of reach, a few $100s for a good unit. Then every so often you're going to replace the filter.
Right.
I highly advise it.
Totally. So, with respects to air quality, you mentioned a bunch of different great topics regarding, some of the effects that we see. Dr. Dale Bredesen's done a lot of work on inhalational Alzheimer's, for example. I think that's probably come across in one of those 8,800 studies, right? It's a lot of medical data. When we're talking about indoor air quality, you mentioned things like air filters. Obviously, air filters are huge, right? Because we're filtering our air just like we filter our water. We're lessening the amount of contaminants that come inside. But we also have, problems with contaminants being created, kind of like what you mentioned earlier with the doctor, cleaning up the water being spilled
Right.
profusely out of the faucet without shutting off the faucet first. It's a pretty interesting thing because with air quality, obviously, we have problems like bacteria overgrowth. We have problems like mold overgrowth, right, inside of people's homes. We have water damage, right? Water damage mixes with certain building components and materials and can off gas VOCs, right? And then
Right.
we also have this interesting topic of our homes being built tighter and tighter than ever before due to energy efficiency. And that lack of air exchange also allows particles to accumulate. And then our bodies end up being, essentially the air filter. Our lungs are the air filter for these
Right.
particles, right? So a lot of recirculation. How do you see all this playing into a role? And do you think it's important that because we are the indoor generation these days, spending 90% of our time indoors, we really need to take steps to improve this?
Yeah, it's a tough one. We've got those buildings that get, I think they're called LEED certified, silver, gold, and the rest, and some of that is air quality, environmental, off gassing, and the rest. I think step one is public awareness, and that's what we're doing right now, and that's what a fair amount of media has focused on. It's not the hottest topic out there, not as sexy as beef tallow or something like that, but it's out there. Number two is providing solutions, and it's not easy when you got new carpet off gassing all kinds of volatile organic compounds. I just had some family members that went through a urine test that tests for about 30 different environmental toxins, from phthalates to BPA to BPS to VOCs to pesticides, herbicides. And these are people that live clean lives. And it's when you test, you really, really say, wow, we are being bombarded. So, in my own life, surrounding myself with air filters and trying to buy organic sheets, organic mattresses, but none of this is inexpensive options.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough to mention. Unfortunately, it is can be more expensive to buy some of these lower VOC alternatives, some of these cleaner home products, especially when you think about like flooring, right? A lot of the more inexpensive flooring, unfortunately, the trade off is it typically contains higher levels of formaldehyde. Again, the cheaper paints, the trade off is they're probably going to have higher levels of volatile organic compounds, right? And
Right.
so, it does make it challenging, unfortunately. But we're mass producing the other stuff that has more chemicals, and I think that's a bit of the trade off. There is it's going to take some time to probably reverse that and start mass producing, some of these cleaner alternatives to bring those costs down. Any other tips before we move off air quality with respects to human health?
No, I think, just talking about it, some people are going to say, oh my God, there's another thing to worry about, but it is another one.
Yeah. So and then I'm imagining we haven't talked about movement yet, right? So I'm imagining that's probably another big topic to discuss. I know you mentioned exercise very briefly, but how important is moving our bodies in regards to our health, especially heart health, cardiovascular health, and can we track these things? Can we gamify it? Can we make improvements? What can we do?
Yeah, there's a concept called CRF, cardiorespiratory fitness, more of a technical term. Other people are talking about MVO2. You do a treadmill test with a mask on your face. The carbon dioxide and oxygen are collected and measured. And you can basically judge, where am I compared to my previous measurements? Where am I compared to my age ranked peers? Where am I compared to a professional athlete? Studies for decades have shown fitness equals longevity. Now, just in general, there's always going to be exceptions, but it is important. We have a sedentary life. We drive a lot. We sit a lot. We're sitting right now. I usually am at a standing desk at work all the time. I've had treadmill desks. These are improvements. But, from the blue zone concept, longevity concept, just simple walking activities, gardening, yard work, dancing. There's little exercise snacks. There just was a big research study, a new abbreviation I didn't know, IPA, incidental physical activity. Getting up from your desk, going over to the copier, taking the papers out, or maybe a little bit more than that, walking down the hall, talking to a colleague, walking back. If you actually judge that and the long-term outcome of people that have more IPA, incidental physical activity, it's meaningful. It actually reduces heart attack risk and maybe even longevity. Better you get your gym shoes on, take a brisk walk, jog, Pilates, pickleball, swim, weights, stretching, do real activity. But if it's not number one, diet is probably number one on the list of reasonable heart prevention strategies. Regular exercise. American Heart Association says 150 minutes a week of moderate, 75 minutes a week of vigorous activity, breathless activity. So if you like HIIT, you got 5 days a week of 15 minutes. If you like zone 2, you got 5 days a week of 30 minutes. Get the job done. And we do also know, if all you can get it done is on the weekend, be a weekend warrior. It helps.
Yeah. Is there any sort of intensity? Like, does the intensity matter in terms of like how hard you're working out? Or is just movement in general really the big importance here? Like, is there a specific, sort of steps we should be looking up for? Is there a specific heart rate we need to get ourselves up to? What does really the ideal situation look like?
Yeah. As I say, plenty of studies now talk about just day to day. Another term your audience can learn is NEAT, non exercise activity thermogenesis. This is a Mayo Clinic term 20 years ago, but it's still used. Things that you don't call exercise matter. The more NEAT you get, non exercise activity thermogenesis. It's kind of like that other one. Literally parking your car further away and just walking 2 more minutes into the office building. Literally taking a flight of stairs, 2 flights of stairs rather than the elevator. Literally cutting your grass rather than riding mower or outsourcing it. The more NEAT you get, the more healthy you get. Now, if you can get some zone 2, zone 4, zone 5 fitness, as we mentioned, all the better. But some people have physical limitations. Some people have environmental limitations. In communities that have poor sidewalks have more heart disease. That's been shown. It's sad. So a lot of people, walk indoors. We're in Michigan. People walk indoors half the year, and a lot of the malls encourage it. That's all great. Just don't sit all day long.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that. I know you mentioned heavy metals. Another thing that kind of crosses the in between food and air is microplastics.
Yeah.
Can you shed us a little bit more light on heavy metals and how we get exposed to those, and then also microplastics and how we get exposed to those?
Yeah, the idea that heavy metals, particularly mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium, can accumulate in our body forever. Lead likes to get trapped in our bones and very hard to get out. It's an environmental thing. Of course, we don't make heavy metals. There's no physiologic role. They're pure toxins. When we had leaded gas, when we had leaded paints, but it's still in the environment. People test positive for lead. The water supply is a factor. Plenty of houses still have old pipes into the house that can shed material and end up in the water supply. Cadmium, smokers, the ground in Virginia is rich in cadmium, bad metal. And mercury, it's the fish, it's the big fish, it's the tuna eaters, it's the mackerel eaters and others. I find a lot of my patients sky high. If they're eating fish 4 to 5 times a week, very often they have sky high mercury levels. It's scary. It raises blood pressure, affects the heart. There's, ample data that heavy metals are very toxic to blood vessels, to the heart tissue, raise blood pressure. It's a real issue. They're hard to get out. Stop putting them in. I hate to tell people stop eating fish. I'm plant-based, so they can join me and eat my greens and my beans and my rice, but some of them, convert over to going back to greasy red meat and pork. And, not better for the heart, might be better for the heavy metals. The microplastics is just another nail in the coffin of getting distressed about the environment. Who heard about them 10 years ago? But the fact that, I'm wearing a nylon shirt, probably a bad idea. Should be wearing an organic cotton shirt. And used to have tea bags that were plastic based. And, we haven't had plastic bottles in my house, like, Costco water bottles in years and years. But I see my medical colleagues all the time downing, plastic bottles. I was just at a medical meeting this morning lecturing. In my gift bag was, plastic water bottles. God, it seems hard to teach people. But, then you got to bring a stainless water bottle and you got to find a good source of water. There's obstacles, but they're worth doing. And you can now, I've done it. There is a urine test for microplastics, $200. If you're curious, I did it. I tested pretty low, but I tested. So,
That's great
take
news.
some precautions. Whether infrared sauna, chlorella, cilantro, and things might be of some value in eliminating microplastics is, unknown, but they're certainly nice strategies.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, imagine you could also get microplastics from your food if you're cooking your food in plastic containers,
Right.
reheating it in plastic,
That's a
etc.
whole nother story. Don't microwave. We have a very healthy medical office, but some of my staff still bring their lunch in plastic containers going in the microwave. And I just fear, what that combination does. Nothing good.
Nothing good. All right, so we talked about a lot today. Now, I want to give people some light at the end of the tunnel. All right, what do they do if they have heavy metals? What do they do if they have microplastics? What do they do,
Yeah.
if they're being exposed to all these toxins and they're looking for answers to get healthier?
And, try and identify the cause, try and eliminate the cause. That's the best way. If it's plastic bottles, stop it. If it's a water supply problem in your house, work on it. If it's absence of water filters and air filters in your house, try and budget installing them. Make that your Christmas gift or your birthday gift. They're not that crazy. If you can find a wellness spa that has a sauna, go utilize it. You can buy one for your home, but that's going to be pricey. It's worth it, but it's pricey. Up your fruits and vegetables, maybe organic. Certain ones, like I mentioned, chlorella is a algae, spirulina, blue-green algae that may be able to help detoxify some of this stuff. And cilantro, half the people in the world hate cilantro, half the people in the world like cilantro, but may have some detoxifying aspect. There are whole detoxification protocols, whether they work for these. There is, of course, an actual insurance covered treatment called chelation if you're found to have a very high level of heavy metals on testing. It's tedious, it's expensive, but it may be insurance covered. Whether it benefits the heart or not is not clear cut. So to do it just for heart disease isn't clear cut. There are people going to more extremes just to complete it. There's something called TPE, therapeutic plasma exchange. You sit in a chair, it looks a little like dialysis for 2-3 hours. They take out your blood, they spin it, they give you your red cells, they keep the plasma. Plasma's full of all these toxins, and you do that a few months in a row. There's actually data. It can detoxify your body of all of these chemicals we talked about, but it's very, very expensive.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Touching on the sauna for a little bit, just because I feel like the sauna is something that is pretty doable. If you don't have a sauna in your house, not many people do, you can reasonably install one, or you obviously can find a health club somewhere nearby where you pay a monthly fee that has a sauna and you have access to that, right? So it's pretty within reach, I would say, with most people. But what really are the benefits of the sauna? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
But there are some different kinds of sauna. There's dry Arizona style sauna. There's hot steam sauna, Finnish sauna, and then there is infrared sauna. And probably the most medical data, specific small studies, is with infrared sauna. That by being able to penetrate and heat our tissues, we may sweat out some toxins. Or actually, our studies where they took samples of sweat from people at a gym, and they took samples of sweat from people in infrared sauna, and there were more toxins being removed by the sauna than by the gym approach. There is other data from Finland where they have different kinds of sauna, and that suggests there's cardiac benefits, blood pressure benefits, long-term survival benefits. So there's actually dozens and dozens of studies for sauna. So it can be, traditionally, it's not like a brand new thing, but it can be a good approach if you can afford to have one in your home. There are some small home units that you can buy for under $1,000, or you can get a big one.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, sauna for me was great. It definitely helped me detox. I was in my own health journey a few years ago. It's kind of kick-started my whole weight loss journey as well, which is really great. It was interesting when I first started, really, really hot in there, like 140 degrees. I was barely sweating. By like day 6 or 7, I was sweating again. It was one of those things. I would imagine I was blocked up with something, right? So it was just great to get to that point where I was able to sweat again. Did a lot of salt, a lot of vitamins to replenish what I was losing out there. But I noticed a pretty significant difference. So if you haven't tried the sauna out there, guys, you should definitely give it a try. I wanted to ask you essentially, I want to talk a little bit about wearables. The technology continues to improve year over year. You've got things like the Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, Garmin, I think makes their own stuff. Fitbit, there's a bunch, right? But are you paying attention to any of these devices? Do you see the technology continuing to improve where they're somewhat reliable? What are your thoughts?
Well, the one I want, but it's not available, but hopefully will soon, is we need a blood pressure wearable. There is essentially none of the ones you mentioned measure blood pressure. There is a device in Europe. It's a bracelet. It seems reliable. They have a lot of medical people that have done quality testing, but the app is not FDA approved, so you can't use the device even if you bought one. I have one. We need that. More people die of high blood pressure than any other single cardiovascular anomaly. So we need a blood pressure wearable that quietly and silently, gives you 10, 12, 20, 30 blood pressures during the day. Could be a patch. There is actually one from Israel, but it's had some problems. I used it. I stopped using it, but I'll use it again when they figure them out. The other wearables, they're not essential. I've had them all. I don't wear any right now. I mean, I had an Oura Ring 10 years ago when it first came out, and it was very big and ugly, but it worked. If you're making changes in your life, like I think the best wearable is now a continuous glucose monitor. We don't usually call that a wearable, but it is a patch in your app, and see what foods you eat and how they react. And if you can make some modifications and keep your blood sugar under a little better control. But I do think there's much to be learned from sleep wearables, although they're not sleep studies. If you have snoring and fatigue and your significant other says you stop breathing, you need a sleep study. That's not a wearable.
Right.
That's an actual test. So, they're definitely going to continue to grow. I mean, the athletes love them. The biohackers love them. The insurance companies may adopt them. I think they'll adopt these wearable blood pressure devices as soon as they're verified and available.
Yeah, no, that sounds very encouraging. And just for the audience who's listening, can you just touch on, some of the dangers with having high blood pressure and how hard your heart has to work?
Yeah.
And then even some dangers on low blood pressure and why blood pressure is an important metric to look at.
High blood pressure is very often a silent problem. It's incredibly common, tens and tens of millions of people. It's difficult to measure in the doctor's office. A lot of people get anxious, the so-called white coat reaction. It's much better to have a home blood pressure cuff on your upper arm, $50, $60, $70, 2-3 times a week. Sit on your couch, arm on the armrest, feet on the floor, measure your blood pressure 3 times in a row, about a minute apart. Most attention to the third number, or you can average them if you want. Under 125 over 70, really good blood pressure is 110 over 70. It's not common to see that. But elevated blood pressure damages arteries, kidney arteries, heart arteries, brain arteries, sexual organ arteries. It's actually worldwide the number one cause of death in the world is elevated blood pressure, 18 to 20 million people a year. And it's preventable with lifestyle, but you got to make a diagnosis. You got to do the hard work. We actually carry blood pressure cuffs in the office, and if I hear from a patient I don't have one, they're leaving with one unless they put up a fight. They need one. Low blood pressure exists, although perfectly fine to be 100 over 65. It's just if you're not dizzy, if you're standing up without problems. We don't see that blood pressure very often. You get below 95 or 90, you start to wonder about hydration, medication, supplements, neurologic and neuropathies, certain diseases, Parkinson's disease and autonomic diseases, diabetes related, can lower blood pressure, particularly when you stand up. We don't want older people falling, so we don't want to push their blood pressure exceedingly low. They still would benefit from normal blood pressure.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That's very important information. I get my blood pressure checked anytime I go to the doctor. I was actually there this morning. It was 104 over 80. So it was like, it's a little on the low side, but
that's good. That's a good number.
Yeah. So it's encouraging to get your blood pressure checked and to really pay attention. High blood pressure, obviously, being a problem, especially that means that the heart is having to work hard to pump that blood out throughout the organs, arteries, et cetera. I think it is an important metric that a lot of people don't always think about. So thank you for covering that. Now, before we go here today, is there anything else we haven't covered in terms of heart health, cardiovascular health? We talked about air quality, food, all the different environmental toxins and the role that it plays. Anything else that we haven't covered that we would be remiss if we didn't cover here today?
The last, little mini topic that I just am passionate about is if you step back and think about it, again, statistics, number one cause of death in the Western world is heart disease, heart attacks, heart failure, aortic aneurysms rupturing. You go to the doctor when you're 45 years old, you're not there yet. And, they're going to tell you about a colonoscopy. They're going to tell a woman about a pap smear. They're going to tell a woman about a mammogram. They're going to talk to a guy about prostate. There is no system in the United States to screen for silent early heart disease. And at least based on a very similar study in Spain at age 45, 50-60% of asymptomatic healthy people working at a bank, already their arteries have easily detectable atherosclerosis. So we have that huge deficit. In reality, there is a test that's been called the heart's colonoscopy, the heart's mammogram, which is a 5-second CT scan called a coronary artery calcium CT scan. It was developed in 1990, became widely available in 1995. You get images if people can see. That's the heart in the middle, the gray blob. That's the bones of the chest around. And the yellow arrows pointing at a 45-year-old who feels great on the pickleball court, but his heart artery, called the widowmaker artery, has as much bone-like hardening as a bone. That's a $100 quickie test called a coronary artery calcium CT scan. And if I were in charge of #Maha, and they bring me to Washington, I'm not going to talk about red dye number 40. I'm going to talk about let's detect heart disease early and tell the people that don't have it, focus on lifestyle. Tell the people that have it, we're going to develop a program so you don't become a victim in 10 years to a death or a stent or a heart attack. So get what I call in social media, test not guess. That's called a coronary artery calcium CT scan. Less or same radiation as a mammogram. It's not insurance covered. It costs about $100. It's something you might want to do every 5 to 10 years and make sure you're hanging in there. I'm turning 66 and I'm a perfect, what's called zero, no detectable plaque. That's good news, but many people, I'd say 98% of people in America of young to medium to adult range, never heard of the test. Primary care doc doesn't mention it.
Well,
Usually
I've never heard of it.
they hear about it on this kind of discussion, and they go ask about it, go read about it. Coronary artery calcium CT scan, nothing injected.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of it. This is thank you for that, because that sounds like an amazing test for $100 to see if you're how the widowmaker artery is
Right.
in your heart, if that how clear that is or how calcified that is. Let me ask you this: if you catch it earlier and you see some calcification or some plaque buildup, you're able to at that point start to make the changes to reverse it.
Yeah, same thing as the toxin experiment. What's causing it? So, are you smoking? Are you sitting? Are you eating fried food? Are you overweight? What's your blood pressure? Do the lab panel, at least the basic lab panel. I do a very extensive lab panel, and work to modify your lifestyle habits. And you may need to see an expert in the field, a cardiologist like me. And that doesn't usually result in being on prescription drugs, but you're aware. You're aware that more than ever, lifestyle choices carry some weight. It's all a good day to the day you have a heart attack, and you're scared, and your family's scared, and hopefully you make it through. But you got 10, 15, 18 years before that day to start working on a better plan.
No, that's well said. I thank you for that. I'm definitely going to do that scan myself, because it doesn't. I'm 30. I'm turning 37. So
It's not unreasonable. You're going to have to really put your finger in your primary care doctor's face and say, I want it, because
yeah,
they've probably heard of it. They haven't ordered it.
yeah.
Maybe invite your primary care doctor to go get it done with you.
Yeah, no, show them this episode so they can see that. I
Great.
really appreciate that. So, Dr. Joel Kahn, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, physically, I practice cardiology in Detroit suburbs and in Boca Raton, Florida. Obviously, I prefer to be in Florida in the winter and Michigan most of the rest of the year. I'm online at drjoelkahn.com, drjoelkahn.com. I have a weekly podcast, blogs, books, and I do see people in about 20 states. I'm licensed: New York, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and others. I work hard. I've been doing this a long time. I still love what I do, and there's so much work left to do. So that's why I love talking to a smart leader like you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. I know you could be a million other places doing a million other things, so it means a lot to us, those listening. And thank you for being here, everyone. Make sure you go check out Dr. Joel Kahn, get his books, sign up for his podcast, and make sure you're paying attention to what he's saying. Dr.
Thank
Joel
you.
Kahn, thank you.
Thank you.